Hello interwebs, I hope you're all doing well. I'm your favorite internet trans here, Jessie Gender, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Daily Wire and stochastic terrorist / conservative commentator Matt Walsh's latest, let's call it comedic documentary. I guess that's what they're categorizing it as. Am I a Racist? Now, if you just follow me on this channel, this may kind of surprise you that I'm going to be reviewing this movie because I mainly just review nerd stuff over here. But if you follow me over on my main channel, you probably aren't entirely shocked. Over on my main channel, I have talked about Matt Walsh as well as general conservative media for a while in different ways and shapes and forms, mainly in long-form video essays that drill down deep into analyzing conservative mindsets and the disinformation that they often spread about marginalized communities, specifically the trans community that I am a part of. So I want to kind of explain why I'm doing this before I get into the meat of the review, because there's a few different things that have happened recently, both to me personally and on the Daily Wire, that I think requires me doing a review like this. First and foremost, Matt Walsh recently took to his channel to basically make a statement that he believes that critics are afraid of reviewing his film.
They're terrified to even mention a film that mocks the DEI industry because they know that the DEI industry can only survive if no one is allowed to question it. Also, our movie is actually good. And I think that's what scares them the most. And I know that sounds self-serving, saying that critics aren't reviewing it because it's too good sounds like some grade A hardcore cope. But in this case, it's true. And I invite any critic to challenge me on that point just by reviewing the film.
I accept that challenge.
I find this narrative to be kind of funny. Because over on my main channel, I did 2 years ago a 4-hour-long video essay breaking down the disinformation in Matt Walsh's first film, What is a Woman? It's a great video, I'm rather proud of it, and it was nearing 1 million views recently. However, just a couple weeks ago, the Daily Wire itself attempted to block the video from the internet using YouTube's back-end copyright claim system. Now, obviously, this is BS because the clips from Matt Walsh's film that I use clearly fall under fair use law. I'm making a video that's directly talking about Matt Walsh's film. And so sadly, that video is now gone, both due to the Daily Wire's block, as well as another copyright claim by the International Olympics Committee. Now, obviously, I can't know the reason why the Daily Wire attempted to block my film, but more than likely, it was them abusing YouTube's copyright system in order to stop people from finding my video on Matt Walsh's film right before the release of Am I a Racist? Thereby, people came to YouTube looking for Daily Wire and Matt Walsh content. After seeing his film in theaters, which they hope many people will do, they might find my video and be turned away from the Daily Wire, and recognize some of the disinformation that his original film spread. Thereby, they attempted to block it and remove it completely, which they sadly have succeeded in doing. Now, I have officially re-uploaded that video over on my main channel. Please go check it out because I want that information to be out there. However, what's more interesting for this context is that that video was actually my official submission to Rotten Tomatoes, because I am an official Rotten Tomatoes critic, for their website for a review of the original film, What is a Woman? So, Matt Walsh is currently, for Am I a Racist, decrying the fact that critics are afraid of reviewing his film, when in actuality most of them just probably don't give a shit about his film, to play victim to his audience, while at the same time he's attempting to censor people talking up about his films. Feels like that's a little bit of hypocrisy there, But this is a known tactic by the Daily Wire. They often attempt to silence critics of their work so that they can keep pushing people into their ecosystem while simultaneously playing the victim so that they can build up loyalty in their audience and base on antagonistic narratives that often vilify transgender people and other marginalized communities. So as a result, as a way to promote the re-release of my main video after the Daily Wire attempted to try to censor it, as well as to live up to Matt Walsh's claim of not being afraid of reviewing his film, here's my review of Am I a Racist that I'm going to be submitting to Rotten Tomatoes as my official review of the film. Now, to be fair and balanced, I have obviously many thoughts about Matt Walsh and the Daily Wire, but I am going to be trying to set all of that aside to just talk about the film at hand, and I will save all of my thoughts about Matt Walsh for other places. This is going to be, for those of you who may be from Matt Walsh's audience out there, as objective a review as I possibly can give. Though I certainly don't believe that any review can ever be actually objective. That's the entire point of reviews, to give my subjective view of the film, but I'm going to do my best to just focus on what the film is and not bring in my awareness and feelings about Matt Walsh generally, because believe me, I have thoughts. Also, for those of you who are from my regular audience, this is going to just be a brief review of the film. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty. I may do a longer form video essay on the film at some point over on my main channel when the film actually releases on digital and I can more directly cite and show clips from the film to sort of talk about them. But right now, I also have a bunch of other more important projects on my plate that I am more earnestly excited about than doing something like that. So be on the lookout for it. It may come in the near future, but if you're looking for that, this is just going to be a quick and dirty review. That long preamble aside, let's actually get to reviewing the film. So there's a couple lenses that I want to look at Am I a Racist through. The first is that this is Matt Walsh's second attempt after What is a Woman to try to capture that conservative Borat energy, where he sort of tries to infiltrate a space by playing a caricature of a leftist in order to poke fun at some of the, as he sees it, hypocrisies or foibles or beliefs of liberals and leftists in America. However, in doing so, he fails to understand what makes Borat so effective. The reason that Borat is so funny is that he is playing off of the earnest biases of the people that he's making fun of. You know, Borat, the character, is a racist caricature of a Middle Eastern person. And the people that he is poking fun of actually believe that that racist stereotype actually exists. And so by playing the character of Borat, he is playing into that preconceived bias and stereotype. He's not actually trying to fit in to the communities around him. He is playing the other based on their otherization of him. However, Matt Walsh here in this film is trying a slightly different tact, where he is attempting to be one of the guys, as they would say, attempting to infiltrate groups talking about racial issues and things like that by pretending to be someone who is trying to learn more about race, as well as get his certification as a DEI instructor. However, by doing so, pretty much everyone in the room when he does this thinks he's just a weirdo. Because he is. Matt Walsh continually puts on these costumes and says weird things at dinners that quickly out him as someone just doing a bit. In fact, many times in the film, you'll see people actually recognize that it is Matt Walsh and quickly kick him out. And it really underscores that Matt Walsh really doesn't understand the people that he is ultimately parodying. Borat works because Sacha Baron Cohen understands the people that he is playing this character to, and is able to play off of their ingrained biases. Whereas Matt Walsh has no understanding of any of the people that he's attempting to parody. He's just going off of his own stereotype of these people. And so when people are confronted with the stereotype of themselves, they're kind of like, yeah, this is kind of bullshit and doesn't make sense and is not at all what we're saying. So on that front, it falls flat and makes very clear that this film is not actually about exposing hypocrisy, but playing to his audience. This is about playing to people who already agree with him. The film isn't trying to really convince anyone. Maybe it will here and there for people who may have some sense of like, ooh, he's being objective and neutral, but to anyone who actually understands the points or any of the things that Matt Walsh is trying to say, it's very clear that he's full of shit. And he's, frankly, just bad at it. On top of that, there's other stylistic problems. Matt Walsh does numerous interviews throughout the film, all leading up to the sort of big sale of the film that they put in all their trailers, his review with white fragility author Robin DiAngelo, which I'll talk more in depth about in just a moment. However, what I want to focus on here is a similar problem that I talked about in my first video about What is a Woman over on my main channel, insofar as the very clearly manipulative editing that the film partakes in. There are many moments where you can clearly see that Matt Walsh is taking clips of people out of context, not actually allowing them to make their actual points, all to propagandize a point that he already wishes to make. And really, if I had just walked in this film and I didn't know who Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire was, I would honestly have been very frustrated and kind of sad, because there are things that this film could touch upon and talk about. The ideas that he is certainly going for are interesting, and yet he has no earnest desire to explore them with any sincerity, earnestness, or curiosity. And you can see that on clear display with the fact that this movie is supposedly talking about racism, and yet Matt Walsh barely talks to any people of color throughout the film. Most of his interviewees are white people. People that he just goes up to on the street and going like, what do you want to talk about DEI and structural racism? People going like, that's weird. He has a few token interviews of black people throughout the film, but they feel like they're mostly just there so that Matt Walsh can say like, hey, I included a few black people, look at my black friends, I can't be racist, huh? Which is weird for a film that's literally titled, Am I a Racist? He's literally doing the racist ropes. The film ends with Matt getting his certification as a DEI instructor and pretending to make a ton of money, all leading to his main point that the racial sensitivity industry is a scam, which he's actually correct about. There are tons of people, such as Robin DiAngelo, who profit off of selling things like racial sensitivity courses to companies. However, Matt is not pointing out this hypocrisy in order to redirect his audience to a deeper understanding of racism and how to effectively combat it while pushing back against those scamming, which could have easily been done if he at any point had showed earnest curiosity and talked to numerous actual earnest activists around this country fighting for legislative reform, or more left-leaning activists like I find myself personally more drawn to, who have larger systemic goals for fighting racism. and discussing the numerous perspectives that they might have on issues like assimilationism, revolutionary action, reformationism, and more. Instead, he's pointing out the hypocrisy to say, basically, to his audience, well, it's all just a facade. No need to worry about racism in this country. It's all a scam to make you feel bad. And I think we can see that most on display with his big interview with Robin DiAngelo. I think there are many things to criticize Robin DiAngelo for. Her book, White Fragility, is a book that is attempting, and I think touches upon some really interesting topics of, systemic analysis of racism within the United States. She very clearly understands the fact that there are institutional and systemic issues that push down people of color throughout the United States since its inception and have been growing ever since throughout many different eras of this country. However, what she ultimately ends up targeting is white people's feelings about that fact, their sense of guilt and sense of feeling like, oh, they have contributed to these harms, and thereby either reacting against that and sort of pushing against feeling bad about themselves, or feeling so guilty that they ultimately do nothing. And her argument ultimately is trying to get past this white fragility, but it doesn't really do anything to instigate people to try to push back against the larger systemic structures within our country. And she has gone around selling and profiting off this book, doing seminars and things like that, and making a lot of money, and yet not actually functionally contributing to fighting against racism within the country. And I think that that is a really good critique and something that you could, if you got an interview with her, drill down deep into if you had earnest curiosity and a willingness to discuss a lot of these issues, and even willingness to address things within yourself. But Matt Walsh has no desire to do any of that introspection both within himself or to target Robin DiAngelo with it. He just does lowbrow, stupid comedy like paying reparations right there to black people within the room, rather than understanding that reparations would be a much larger systemic, not even solution, but attempt to start building towards solutions within this country. Ultimately, all just to make fun of it for his audience, to make ideas like reparations seem ridiculous. Again, putting my larger feelings about Matt Walsh aside, just looking at this film, I would be very pissed off if I went into this film earnestly without any knowledge and was hoping for a documentary that would honestly explore some of these issues. And so at the end of the day, I would even say that this is a worse film than What is a Woman, because Am I Racist contains a lot of the same problems as What is a Woman. The bad comedy, the manipulative editing, the playing to his own base rather than having earnest curiosity. However, What is a Woman was a film that, at least in some way, shape, or form, did coalesce a lot of the anti-trans narratives that Matt Walsh and the Daily Wire like to spread, and put them all in one place to build one structured narrative towards vilifying transgender people and, in their minds, gender ideology overall. And it had a galvanizing effect for his audience. On those terms, as much as I dislike the film for numerous obvious reasons, again, go watch my main video on my main channel that the Daily Wire tried to censor, it was effective in what it was trying to do. Here, though, this film doesn't really feel like it's saying anything. It just flops around, kind of lazily, doing bad comedy without really having anything more to say than, isn't thinking that anyone can be racist in today's day and age stupid, without actually having any desire to even push back against things like ideas of structural systemic racism within the country. That's often their big thing, that there is no systemic racism in America, or if there is, it's something that we have gone past or there's no use fighting back against. But he doesn't even bring it up here. It's frankly lazy even on conservative standards, which is pretty damn lazy. At the end of the day, the film is clearly a propaganda piece meant to use the provocative style of a lazy Borat film to do what most conservative media does today. Take earnest questions and issues that their audience are confronting in their daily lives or in their news media, and instead of delving into such questions as the systemic issues and systems in place that uphold racism, how all of us are incentivized to partake in said systems, and how we can work to try to create something different, be it through reformation of the system or something more radical, it instead tells its audience that it doesn't need to introspect, that they're perfectly fine and can never uphold intentionally or otherwise racist actions, narratives, or institutions. And the fact that they're told to feel that way is all someone else's fault who is actively lying to you and trying to manipulate you for profit. And you should at best do nothing beyond buying Daily Wire merch and products that reinforce your worldview, and at worst actively partake in the harassment of groups actively fighting systemic issues and structures based on active disinformation and simplification of narratives spread by films like this and content like Matt Walsh's. Except for in this film's case, he doesn't really do a good job of that second part. Really, all this movie is just trying to do is sell more Daily Wire merch. This film may get more attention because it's being released in theaters and getting a much bigger marketing push than Was Woman, but at the end of the day, I don't see this film having as much of a galvanizing effect within the conservative community outside of the narratives that Matt Walsh is already trying to build, that critics are too afraid of the film, or, libs are triggered by it. I'm not triggered by it. I think most critics don't care about the film. It's just lazy and bad, unfortunately. I honestly would have respected another What is a Woman more than this film. But that is my review for Matt Walsh's What is a Racist? Sorry, am I a racist? Spoiler alert, yes, he is. What do you think about the film? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure this comment section is going to be absolutely lovely. And also, for those of you who are interested more in my thoughts on Matt Walsh generally, as well as his other films, again, go check out my video that I've re-released over on my main channel that the Daily Wire tried to censor. Because, they're hypocrites. I'm sure all of you are going to be lovely in the comments and not comment on my gender identity in the slightest. But to all of you, I think you're all beautiful, and I hope you all, my friends, live long and prosper.